So today I am gonna like mostly just focus on my process, and I'm gonna do a little like demo for you guys of like the first part where I do like a lot of brainstorming and sketching and thumbnailing. So usually, I mentioned this last week, but usually when I start my sketches, I start on like lined shitty notebook paper just to like get my ideas down, because for me this is like exploration stage. I don't really want to focus too much on like, you know, the whole design of the thing. I just really want to focus on like patterns and like the concept, especially if it's like an editorial article. I really need to get the concept down. And here's some more. Yeah. So tonight's demo is pretty much going to look like this. It's going to be a mess, and it will be like incoherent, and it'll only really make sense to me. But hopefully, hopefully, like when I start sketching in Photoshop, things will start to make sense to you guys. Yeah.
I think I mentioned this last week when you were talking about that, when we saw things. I just collected a bunch of my father's, all of his process work, a lot of thumbnailing and stuff. It was like he would have all these black and white drawings, and then he'd write the funniest things next to him. I was reading through, and this like one would just say, kind of purple. Not like really purple, but kind of purple. You know, he was just whatever came to mind to remind him what he was drawing, which I thought was fun. I thought was funny, and I noticed that in yours too. Just remind yourself later on what you were thinking.
Yeah, I literally will write down things, because I wrote sky with question mark, because I guess I thought this was a sky. We'll see. Yeah, so today I am going to do thumbnails for Shakespeare's play King Lear. It's actually an actual assignment that I have to do, so I might as well just do it now. So, but yeah, once after I get to this point in my sketches, I'll start, I'll bring it into Photoshop and I'll paint it again in black and white. And then I'll send this to the art directors because it's more readable. And I'll also give them like, you know, like a little description of the concept that I have. And as oh yeah, usually when I start my process, or when I like start a thumbnail, I need to have reference images, or just like images that inspire me. And because I am so inspired by architecture, for this series, for the Photo Society piece, I was just focusing on architecture and trying to incorporate that into my concept. So I was focusing a lot on mirrors and reflections and like fragmented memories and stuff. So a lot of like what I was like trying to look for was like buildings with really cool like mirror designs, or like just the way, like a lot of like modern architecture is really like deconstructed, and it's really cool. So for this piece, I was looking at the new museum. I was looking at like the Berlin Philharmonic, or something. I don't really know where this is. And I was looking at like the sky room in the new museum for like all of like the diagonal sort of architecture. And then I kind of incorporated like the whole structure of the new museum up here. And then I sort of like just had fun in this part, in the ceiling part, to kind of like forward the concept that the main character's memories are all fractured and all fragmented, and to play with that theme of like broken mirrors and stuff. So for this piece, which was chosen to be the final, I was actually looking at the Vancouver Art Gallery, because they have this like really cool wavy window thing. I don't really know what it is, but I kind of really liked it. Originally in my sketch, I wanted this to be just mirrors, sort of like multiple mirrors kind of lined up together. And it would show like a really trippy fractured image of like the sky and the clouds, and maybe like have a little like a hint of Mars. But as I was drawing it, it was like way too complicated. So I had to delete the whole concept and just focus on putting the concept here in like, or the entrance, I guess, to have him like reflect multiple times to sort of like nail down the concept that like he is being fragmented and he has like multiple lives that he doesn't know of. And I was also looking at a lot of fine artists. This one I found in like some gallery in Chelsea. I like walked in and there was this like really cool installation where it was like four revolving doors that were all just like mirrors. And if you stood in the center and you revolved all of them, it was like super trippy. So I was like referencing this and kind of like trying to incorporate that into the mirrors over here.
One of the main advantages of living in New York City, I could just walk into a gallery in Chelsea and see that.
Yeah.
I always got a kick out of like talking with people that live in New York that work there and they don't take advantage of going to the galleries or the museums. So I know COVID hasn't been great, but I love to hear that you're doing that. It's my favorite part of the city.
Yeah, I love the fact the museums, like if you're a New York resident, is free if you can show proof that you live in New York, which is awesome because you don't have to pay anything. And like for galleries, that's also free. So like, yeah, if you live in New York or if you're like want to live in New York in the future, just keep that in mind. It's super cool, a great resource too. So today I'm going to focus on King Lear. And I kind of want to show you guys. So usually when I start, okay, as I mentioned before, like these are like my sketches and I go really crazy with them. This is like, I have like all my notes here and then I just kind of like draw over my notes and I just like kind of go in with pen and pencil and just kind of try to jot down all my ideas. And usually if I come to an idea that I like, I'll start to then work on composition and then I'll like fill it in value. And sometimes I'll go into like gel pen to like sort of like bring out the highlights because I work like a lot with like normal pen, like this pen, or just any pen I found on the ground. And so I need to use gel pen to like kind of bring out the highlights. But yeah, as you can see, it's just scribbles because I'm not even thinking about like trying to make it look good at this point. I'm just trying to figure out the idea and the concept behind it. And yeah, it's just crazy. And then I have another one over here that is just kind of like, oh my God, this one, I don't even know what this is. Let's see. I don't even know what these are. Yeah. Here is a crazy one. So yeah, so that's basically like my thought process. And I know that none of this makes sense. So I'm sorry that you have to watch me do this.
No,
But
it actually makes complete sense, Catherine. And
okay.
I was interested. I just have one I'd like you to describe. Maybe you could open that up again, a few pages towards the end. You have drawings, lots of drawings with almost everything's in a box. And then you have drawings where things aren't in a box. Keep going. There was a really great example if you go backwards. Well, even there, the still life setup you have, I mean, there's things going on. Is that just observational drawing? You're not trying to think about composing a picture, but there's so many things you have like with the box around it and so many things. And then there's a few that are just loose. They're the vignetted. They don't have any framework.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so with stuff like this, or oh my God, so much.
There was a really great one, almost like 2 pages from the end. That's what I reacted to. Right there, like on the top
Okay.
where it's all loose and you're just drawing objects on the top right side.
Okay.
And you're just drawing objects. Are you just trying to figure out shapes? Are you just trying to, to me, it doesn't look like you're, the other ones looks like you're putting it into a complete composition. And there it's just kind of loose and it's just, what are you thinking about?
So usually when I start, I just start sketching. So usually it starts around this stage. And it's after I sort of get a general idea of like what I want, that I start to try to box it in. So this is a good example. So I was trying to figure out like like a bird's eye view of this room. And so I just kind of drew down perspective and then just started going at it. And then I would fill it out with values. And then after that, I would start to figure out how I would try to crop it. And usually around this point, I will then like redo the image and try to like figure out like if try to figure out a more solid thumbnail, something that's more understandable. So it's kind of a bit of both. Because with a lot of assignments, I have certain parameters I need to work within. So I always need to make sure that like the image, works within those parameters. But like, I guess it's more natural for me to just start drawing and just like figure out where to crop the image after.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that explanation, and I completely get why.
Yeah, it's a good example here. I was trying to like figure something out and just like crop it in later. But yeah. So today I'm going to focus on doing some thumbnails for the story King Lear. And I'm going to share my screen again. So with King Lear, the first thing I want to do is get started on concept. And so I have like a couple of like references that I have pulled and compiled just so you guys can see like my thought process. So usually when I start with like conceptualizing, I try to focus on the main theme of whatever I'm working with. So in King Lear, like in my opinion, the main theme of the story is betrayal and like how, like King Lear's daughters, especially like the older two, sort of betray his trust, even though he's given them a lot and almost like all of his assets, and the third daughter nothing. And then like later on, you realize that like his two eldest daughters don't really give a shit about him, and so he feels so betrayed. And I think like that is such a strong theme in this story that is sort of what I want to focus on. So usually I will start by, like figuring out the main theme of the story and try to really just focus on like a phrase or like a couple of words that will sum it all up. So in my, like to me, I think it's about betrayal. So I Googled the definition of betrayal just to like get a bigger and better sense of the word. And also like when you Google something and there's definitions and synonyms and antonyms, I think that's like a really good place where you can like start brainstorming even more and branching off from there. So with betrayal, the act of betraying something, like violation of someone's trust or confidence. And then the synonyms for it, which I really like, is like backstabbing, disloyalty, two-timing. And antonyms is like allegiance, devotion, faithfulness, which I really like. I think like this really helped me figure out that like betrayal is like broken trust, when you break someone's trust. And for betrayal to happen, I think there needs to be two parties involved, especially if you look at the antonyms here, there's allegiance. Like you can't just allegiance with like one person, you gotta have two people. So that's interesting. And also I want to focus on, like, as I said before, I really like pulling reference from like architecture and stuff. So I went on the internet and I typed in like old Scottish castles because I really want to draw a castle. And so I found like all these really cool ruined castles, and they're all super cool. And I love like these bridges and how broken everything is, which I think, could be a great metaphor. Like, you know, since trust is like something, like what's that phrase? Like you can't burn a bridge or something, which basically means you betrayed someone and you're like cutting ties with them forever. So I think like the bridge theme is something that I can go off of, which is really cool. And I also really love the way that it like it's so desolate looking. And like I love the way like these people are so small and this is so like gargantuan. Some more
Catherine, I'm going to
castles.
try not to interrupt too much while you're doing this, but I do have I think this is a good question from the audience. Being that a lot of your projects demand fast turnaround times, do you have a set time limit for coming up with ideas?
Yeah, usually they require sketches in like 1 or 2 days. The fastest I ever made sketches was like an hour, and they were really bad. So I prefer to have like 1 or 2 days to really think about it. Because usually I feel like this is the case of everybody. Um, when they get like an assignment or a theme, like you always have like 1 or 2 ideas that pop up immediately. And you're like, oh, this is perfect. And then and then you like do that in like 15 minutes. And then the next 2 days is for like really trying to figure out if there are any other good concepts out there. So there is a time limit, but I find that like just I find that a time limit helps because you are like sort of given like there's a limit to how much you can think and conceptualize, because if you give yourself too much time to think, then you'll never start. But so yeah.
There's an advantage. What might be perceived as procrastinating from the outset, from somebody that's a non-artist or non-creative looking in, there's an advantage to taking your time, and that is giving yourself the opportunity to come up with a better idea. And I like how you've said that. It's like I have to do it in this time, but I allow myself more.
Yeah, usually I like pop out like 1 or 2 sketches, and like unless it's like a 6 hour assignment, I would be like, okay, this is perfect. But usually I procrastinate, and I like think about it in like the shower while I'm eating. I just like need to like think about it, like really marinate in my mind before I like send the sketches in. So yeah, so I love, the way this is broken and the way it's so jagged. And I also love that it's like incorporated into the mountain. Because I know like King Lear or like Shakespeare is like Scottish or English, but everything's like set in Scotland or something. And I know like back then it was like just Scotland was just like grass. So I kind of like want to incorporate that. I also love the shape of this castle here. This is so cool, and I love the way it like kind of mimics these rocks. And I love the way it like goes into like the water. It's so cool. And this is like circular, which is like crazy to me. Oh, I also like really think about if I want to like stick with the time era, like the accurate time era, and like work with like old castles and stuff, or if I want to like, have some liberty and, go sort of take a different approach and maybe go modern. And something I love about like architecture is that like, even though this is from like probably 1200 and this is like from 30 years ago, there's like a lot of similarities here, which is another thing is like I could take this as a sort of guide and just like turn this into a castle if I wanted to. So I love like just finding different things that don't necessarily pertain to the subject, but trying to incorporate it into the sketch. And some more. Yeah, this I think really mimics like this castle here because of the bridges and like the way there's like two like giants. I don't know what this is called, like slabs. And there's like this entrance. I think it's just really cool. And this one is just crazy, but it's really inspirational. So I've added it in. So yeah, so that's all my inspiration. And then after that, I usually get started on sketches. So I actually have sketches already, just in case I like my brain farts and I can't think of anything. So yeah, as I mentioned with John, I usually just kind of start sketching and just kind of go crazy and see whatever comes up. So I think I'm going to start by drawing a bridge because I mentioned that I would do that. And these are going to be really rough. And maybe like little thingies. And so another thing that I like to think about when it comes to composition is like mood and atmosphere. And I think everything is very, like the way I try to compose my images, like has a lot of symbolism in it because I needed to like forward the concept. And so I guess for this bridge, because the main characters is King Lear, his two daughters, and Cordelia, and the two daughters betray him, which is what I want to focus on. They betray him and they leave him feeling really powerless. So I think you can visualize that the best if like the two sisters kind of had more weight or like towered above him, kind of like looking down on him, which like is super, which you can like compose into the image, I guess. I guess this will be dark. And I cast a stilt thing, some windows. Yeah. And then I draw the box in. And I also try to think about how I want to frame my image. So like I could let this wall just keep going, but because it's like to the edge of it, to the page or the image, I want to sort of like introduce another element that will sort of like bring the eye back. So I'm thinking like simultaneously composition, design, meaning, concept, and everything at the same time. This is like the part in my process where I kind of just like, I pretend like I'm really deep. So like anything that I think of, I'm like, yeah, that's a great metaphor, and I'll add it into it. And then let's see. So if the light source is coming from here, that means this is casting a shadow down like this. And I kind of want, well, I'll figure that out later. I don't know if I want King Lear to have, and this would be cool. It's kind of like cone shaped, not cone shaped, sorry, cylindrical shaped, which would sort of have like a really cool gradient effect, which kind of like break up all the hard edges and everything. I also want to ground it so it doesn't look like it's just floating. I'm also thinking about value because if you don't have your value structure, then you kind of get confused, or I do at least. I want to frame this in.
I usually joke when people ask what kind of pencil. I know that's a wingtip, but or black wing, excuse me. The how hard is it?
How hard is it?
Yeah, what is it? What number is it?
I think this is 6B. I'm not sure. I lost the number.
but it's really soft.
Yeah, I really like it. I like how dark it can get and how light it can get. So like, it's almost like painting. And then, since it's such a, sorry.
I know lots of illustrators that's their favorite pencil.
Yeah. I have like a collection of these. I'm too afraid to use them. And so since this is such a dark and dreary novel with like murder and backstabbing, I'm gonna decide that the backdrop and like the background, the sky is gonna be dark too, to kind of give like a really ominous feeling to the whole image. I'm gonna have that's too light. Maybe add a door here to like introduce a frame the image. I don't know. Put something here. This looks a little empty, so I'm just gonna like pop some shapes around and see what happens. And the two figures. So this is a white gel pen, which I'm like using in times like this where I like accidentally drew over something important. I need to like fill it back in. So I think that these little thingies here, this, I don't know what it's called, but I think they're distracting. So I'm gonna black them out. My process is a lot of experimenting and just trying to like figure things out. Yeah, okay. And so now I have one sketch, and this is okay. I think that this is distracting compared to these figures here. So I'm gonna redraw the image and try to like frame it so that, you know, it's not as distracting. And I'm also gonna like look at the reference images that I have to sort of, you know, not just like make shit up. Yeah, so I know it's like there's like these two tower thingies, and then there was like the bridge or something that connects it. There's like another tower thingy over here. And there's this like this extra tower thing. I don't even know what this is, but it's kind of cool. So I'm gonna add it. And the wall is like not where this bridge is. It kind of goes higher up. Yeah. Let's see. So this entrance is actually like more pointy. And it's gonna be a thick wall. I'm gonna have it right here. There's like stairs or something that like kind of bring it over. I'm gonna like or something like that. I know like the image is like 4x6 and it's supposed to be longer, so I'm like crop it. Yeah, I'm gonna, I forgot the figures. I will want the shadow here. I want everything, the sky to be black. Or maybe I can add some clouds in for some texture. There's King Lear, it's a triangle. I will have maybe the two eldest sisters coming. Okay, so now I'll just put them here. Let's see what happens. Okay. Oh, some windows. So one thing I learned from the academy is that you cannot space everything out evenly, or else everything looks sort of like stiff and like fake. So you gotta like plan out exactly how like unevenly you want to like space out your dots and like decor or something.
Yeah, it was always explained to me that you get interest out of your design by the differences. You know, so difference of division of space, scale, value, and that's what keeps things exciting.
Mm-hmm. I think so too.
Well, I'm glad you agree with me.
Yeah, I know like at one point in the academy, I like still wasn't really understanding like composition and like shape language. And like this is like during critique, you just like you, John, you just stood up. Like you were like looking at your phone and then you like looked up and you stood up and you were like, everything is about contrast. And then you sat back down, and ever since that, I like everything clicked and it made sense. And I understood like how to like compose my images better.
And I meant, and I know you know what I meant was it wasn't not just about light and dark contrast relationships, you know, shape relationships.
Yeah.
I had one of my favorite things ever said as an instructor. I so wish I had said it. It was so smart and so simple. Gary Kelly made the comment one day. he just kind of blurted out that a picture is a collection of shapes, and it's up to you to control those shapes. And he said the tricky part is to make those shapes interesting. And then he talked about differences, and it's the thing that we see, like things we see in nature that are like organic and random. It's hard for an individual to think that way. I think most people's tendency is to think non-organically and think in a very symmetrical, even, and they everything becomes a pattern and similar. And it's the imbalance where the excitement lives.
Yeah, it blew my mind when I like heard you say that. I was like, oh my God, everything makes sense now. Like contrast of shapes, contrast of like value, contrast of color, scale, like how empty an image is compared to where the busy parts are. It all makes sense, and it's so cool that it like clicked like that.
What blows my mind is that you figured it out so quickly. Seriously, it's like I see, I always think of like artists that I consider, Sterling's the perfect example. He's like I call him a freak of nature because he sees things in shape. He did at a very young age. He identified his design skills. He was like natural for him, and he never seemed to really struggle with it. It was just easy for him. It was always very difficult for me. It's, again, know your strengths and weaknesses, but I think you've kind of fallen to that category. It looks like it, from the outside looking in. I know you work at it very hard, but it looks like you do it very easily.
Thank you. Yeah, it took a while to really find the perfect balance, because I think when I was like a student and I learned about shapes and contrast, like I was still trying to get like a grasp at it. So I just copied you guys, and like Mark English, Gary Kelly, Stern Helmy. I just copied them to try to like understand the shape. And I think the hardest part, or not the hardest part, but it will come naturally to everybody, but it's like kind of divorcing yourself from that and sort of like incorporating like your own voice into it.
Well, Catherine, real secret is I still copy all those guys.
Good. Yeah.
There's
everybody's
more.
Yeah. Everybody's always such an inspiration to me. So I think I also do this thing where I kind of like black out the edges to kind of like really frame the image. Yeah, I think I blacked it out too much. I'll just write a note here. Looks good. This bridge.
When's your due date on this?
So I actually got this assignment back in March, and I don't have a due date on this, which is why I haven't really touched it since.
Oh my gosh, it's the Shakespeare syndrome. And you remember like seeing all my father's, he did all the Shakespeare plays. He did all 30, I think there's 33 of them.
Oh, and wow.
Bantam, they're all book covers, and Bantam bought all the originals, and they gave them a year to do it. And after 6 months, the art director called them and asked them how he was doing, on the project, where he was. And they were worried. They hadn't heard from him. Of course, he hadn't even started it yet. But it was like, it's something about procrastinating and Shakespeare go well together.
Yeah, that's definitely. I'm glad I'm not the only one. Okay, so this, I kind of like. I think it's cool. I don't like how the shadow's just going off the page, but that's something I can fix later. I would think, so right now, this is supposed to be solid black, but there's texture. But I know that once I bring it to like Photoshop, it's going to be totally flat, which isn't something that I want. And I also, this looks kind of like, haunting, I guess, right now. But I would like to like sort of break up this like very structural, horizontal, vertical structure. So maybe I'll like add like lightning bolts or something. I don't know. Be kind of cool. But like kind of like baroque the shape a little. And I also know that like during the climax of the of the um of the play, like King Lear runs out into the rain and just starts like shouting at nothing, which is like a really impactful scene. There's also something I think about. Like I think about the concept and like the main theme, but I also think about like which scene in the story was most like impactful or like most intense that like it like I felt something the most from it, which was the scene where he runs out and he's like so betrayed and he's like so at a loss for he's so like confused and hurt that he just goes mad. And I think that's like a really intense scene. I really like it. So I'm gonna add that. So this is very architecture focused, and I kind of want to like do something with like that cliff and that like that castle that was like just on the edge of the cliff that looks like it was like falling over. I think I want to focus on like the instability and like the brokenness in this piece. I think kind of so something like that sort of ooh, really cool. There are like waves coming up. It's like okay, yeah, perfect. And hold on, I gotta pull up the reference. So it's basically like a really fucked up rectangle. It's like land in the background. So I'll have like a door here and like some
I'm really
hole.
enjoying watching you do this, Catherine. I mean,
Thank
it's
you.
so, and this is amazing. It's so purposeful. I mean, I love that you can articulate the reasoning behind what you're doing and what you're drawing.
Oh, thank you. I, this is pre-planned, so I have like a little script up here. But thank you. I'm glad to hear that.
Well, so I'm gonna just say this, and maybe you can react to it. Is
Mhm.
you know, we all have like, well, maybe not all of us, but we've learned some rules about composition, whether it be division of thirds, the golden means, whatever it is,
Yeah.
60, 30, 10 rules, turnaround, whatever it is. You learn things about design that generally work and make sense. But every picture that you make is a journey. That's the way I kind of look at it. You go on this journey based on the narrative or the concept, and you just start throwing things at the wall as a starting place. And maybe you have some of that understanding in the back of your head, like, well, I know not to put this right in the center of the page. Obviously, you're thinking about things like that. I know that, tension's created when I do this. You're looking for tangents, all those things that are going on, but you don't really know until you see it. I mean, it's kind of it is a journey. And I think the best designers go on that journey every time they develop a piece.
Yeah, I think that like following, I mean, obviously you should learn the rules, like the rule of thirds and like golden circle or whatever it's called.
The golden
And
mean.
yeah, it's a golden ratio, sorry. I feel like you should definitely learn that and like do those exercises to really like understand and get a foundation of it. But I also think that like you can't stick to those things because like it's very constricting when you need to like stick to certain rules. So I think that like everybody can benefit from just like learning something, absorbing that knowledge, and then breaking those rules just as an experiment and everything.
Yeah, it's like, a lot of those things that we rely on, those rules, a lot of people rely on. You can kind of go back and look at almost all good, nicely designed work or iconic illustration or painting, and you can find one of those rules that fit that picture.
Mhm.
I doubt very seriously that, Egon Schiele was thinking about some of those rules when he was doing those drawings. I think
Yeah.
really organic expression that he just recognized something good was going on and he controlled it. And again, it's journey and it's reactionary. And
Mhm.
I truly, this is impressive.
Thank you. Yeah, also I feel like that's another reason why I don't like to like draw the box first and then draw the image. Is because if I like let's say I drew this image of like a man at a window or something, but if it like now I can figure out where to crop it. And then cropping is kind of like where the fun begins to me because you could crop it like maybe you could zoom out real crazy and have it like super tiny. And then this would have like, this would be such a haunting image. You could crop it really close or something where you can just see the edge. You can like push them all the way to the edge. And then from here, I'll get like inspiration. I'll like maybe try a different angle. Maybe like we're looking at from the left and then there's like a shadow being casted and we see the figure from like the side and it's like dark and haunting and everything else is like, and there's like a wall maybe, I don't know. Yeah, I think you should just go wild because if you go wild, I think that's where you can like find or like make the best images.
During my, I'm just going through it right now with my foundations class, the assignment of making a picture, doing a landscape, but making a complete picture. They've done different exercises before that. They have to go out and shoot their reference, and then the first move after the reference of creating your reference is cropping it. I think a lot of people think about they see a reference, they see something they want to take a picture of, and the first thing that they have to kind of rationalize is, why am I taking a picture of that? What is it that excites me about this? What shape relate? And I think it's usually shape relationships, something they see.
Mhm.
But it's usually when they take the photograph, it's usually a small part of the whole picture. And so learning to dissect what you're looking at and get the best cropping, the most immediate read out of those things is always the first step for me. And then
Mhm.
redrawing it, then going back and going through the steps you're going through right now. This is so
Yeah. Oh, thank you. Ooh, fill that in. I really like this texture that I have going on for like the sky. I think like when I do this digitally, I'm gonna like do something about that.
okay. So that's a perfect segue to a good question. When you feel that the image is strong and you're where you like it to be, do you scan the finish digitally using Photoshop or Procreate?
Um, like if I scan this sketch and then transfer it to the computer.
Yeah.
Okay, no, I don't. I just kind of redraw it. I don't know why, but I can't seem to.
You
Uh,
redraw it digitally?
yeah, I do redraw, which I will show you guys in a bit.
Do you
But
do
yeah,
you, you use Photoshop? Do you
I
ever
do
use
use
Procreate?
Photoshop. I do use Procreate too, but I don't know. For some reason, I guess I'm just used to Photoshop because I've just been working with it for so long that any other app or program, I don't know. Like I'm just like I hate this. I miss my like Control Z and everything. I don't want to double tap the screen. So this is giving me new ideas. So maybe that could be King Lear. This could be that scene where he's like running out into the storm and he's like really upset and he's like yelling at everybody about like why the world is so cruel. I don't know, waves or whatever. And I think I'm just gonna redraw it. I think it would be cool if we could incorporate some clouds, maybe. So there's like, it's almost like a flurry, like a mess, intense emotion. Oh, my cat is here. Please stop. Oh no.
Oh, getting some screen time.
Yeah. She wants to be the center of attention as always. Let's see, the cliffs. So I'm gonna redraw this. I like the shape of that. So I'm just gonna please. So and then clouds. Clouds is like sort of like a pattern thing that like I've mentioned before. They're really hard to design. And especially since they're so abstract, you can basically do anything with them. But also because they're so abstract, you really have to like figure out how to design it in a way that looks like clouds, but also isn't like, that supports the image, but doesn't like detract from it either. But doesn't look so unnatural, but doesn't look, you know, it's just difficult. So I like that this has like a unexplainable shadow, but I don't like how it's so even. So I don't know. Oh yeah, clouds. I know Scotland has a lot of mountains. I don't know if they're trees though.
So somebody mentioned the cat shadow adds an effect.
It adds to the composition. Usually around this time, I'll like pull up cloud images to like look at. But I think this, since this is so like vertical right now and this is going this way, I'll have like a, oh my God, Paolo. I'll add like a vertical that's going that way. I have no idea what that was.
Cat's getting serious.
So I really like it with clouds when you can kind of like see that their clouds are in perspective and they're like going back and they're on like a flat plane. I think it adds like a lot of like dynamic movement to it. So I'm gonna just like go crazy here. Yeah, something like that. And it's like raining. It was like storming at this point of this story. So yeah, waves.
It's really funny that one of the first times I was around George Pratt and we were watching Baron's story draw. And George kind of looked at me and turned to me and he goes, I don't think there's anything more satisfying watching an artist that draws so well that you can kind of imagine what they're thinking. They're moving so quickly, and it's so it all kind of comes together so quickly, and you're doing that. And he ended it. He goes, it's the closest thing to magic that I've seen.
Oh, that's so sweet.
It's really like watching magic, because you're seeing somebody visually think, and it really is fascinating.
Thank you. Yeah. I love Pratt.
He's all right.
Yeah, I don't know what happened here. I like the shadow was going this way and this shadow's going that way. This makes more sense. Also, I like this kind of like zigzag that I have going on. I think that's kind of cool. Right, clouds. No. Yeah. Lone King Lear going crazy. And I think adding all this like texture and like weather, I think kind of like helps with like mood and atmosphere. Because as I mentioned in like my first presentation, I really enjoy using environment to like show someone's emotional state. Because like it's kind of interesting. You know how sometimes when you're like really sad and suddenly it starts raining, or like when you're having a really good day, like the sun just shines brighter or something. I think like our psychological states like affect the way we see certain things. So, which is why I try to incorporate that into my drawing. Let's see. Hmm. I don't know what the fuck is going on in this image anymore, but it was worth an attempt. It it definitely feels chaotic. I don't. I'll fix it in Photoshop, but I usually like.
I like it. I like it. It's really interesting.
It's very chaotic feeling. There's almost like a spiral going on, which is kind of cool.
I love that area that's cast in shadow, how it divides, that tangent with the shadow behind it is really beautiful.
Thank you.
Nice. I have a question here. Do you keep a collection of reference photos, or do you do new searches as you need them?
I do new searches each time I need like reference photos, and I do like delete the folder after the assignment is done, which I regret sometimes because sometimes I can't find that image anymore. So usually around this point, if I have like a sketch that I like, I'll like start it. So I kind of like this one, but like fix clouds. Yeah. And I'm gonna do maybe like one more. So these are all pretty like top heavy. Like all of these, this is really shiny. all of these sort of like the horizon line is like here, it's like here, it's all in the bottom, and there's a lot of sky. So maybe I want to try something else where like the horizon line is like higher. That like always gives a different feeling too. So I kind of want to do the cliff things again. And since we're going to be looking up this time, I think it's going to be more dramatic, like slope going on, and everything else is also like dramatically different. So the castle. Maybe like a shadow or something. And I know like, yeah, it's sort of like juts out. And the water is kind of calm in this image, in the reference image, but I don't want it to be calm. And it's like there's like a road that goes down or something, and like rocks, or like the cliff, or like waves of that. Maybe there's like rocks jutting out or something. And then maybe King Lear is like right here. Just, or maybe it's raining. This reminds me of that one romanticism painting of this guy standing at like the shore and there's like waves crashing onto him. So like later on, I might like use that as a reference if I decide to go with this image. So I know it's raining. Oh yeah, clouds. Oh, so crazy. Poor King Lear, right there alone. I think he's gonna cast a shadow onto these rocks or something. And I'm gonna maybe big bold shadow for this cliff. And I guess more rocks. I need to make sure that like if I do include the rocks, they have to like, I guess like your eyes need to like trail to him. So foreground element to like bring your eye into the image. I don't know, the water's so crazy sometimes. Texture of the rocks. Huh, I don't know. Well, this is a good place to stop. So now that I have like some ideas, so I like this piece, this one, and now I'm gonna transfer this into Photoshop. So I'm just gonna like put this aside and I'm gonna change my camera. Ah, shit. Okay. So now I have Photoshop open and I have a canvas up. Forgot my Cintiq pen. Okay, so in Photoshop, this is where I will sort of like fix the comp. So right now I have like ideas that I really like, and I have like a basic idea of like what my composition will look like. So now I'll go into Photoshop and sort of like redraw and repaint it and fix some like minor things I haven't really thought about. When it comes to like Photoshop, I like doing this over again because when you paint it again and when you paint it in like a different canvas and a different medium, there are certain things that like will pop up and you'd be like, oh, I realize this isn't working. Like the composition looks weird. It works like traditionally, but it doesn't really work digitally. Or like while I'm painting it, I have like a revelation and like, oh my God, this concept sucks. I need to redo it again. So I will,
I'm just laughing.
okay. So usually I always put down like a gray in the background, just so like it's not like pure white and I can have like a sense of like a value structure going on. And then I will go for like a darker gray, not like completely black. Because if I go black, then there's no, like I could lighten it, but I like putting my darks last so that it like really highlights the image. So I will start. Uh, okay. So for this image, I am carving out the shape of that building. I like working in Photoshop because like you can get the brushes so big that you can immediately like carve out your shapes instead of like pencil where you kind of like have to spend time drawing. I kind of like that this drops down. Not that. Looks like another structure. Looks like some window. Well, it makes sense that there is a doorway here where the bridge is. It's like a window or two. And then I'll like drop the opacity, start filling in the shadows. Ah, so laggy.
I should have asked what are you using a pen? You're using a what Wacom? What are you using to as a tablet or?
So usually I use a Cintiq, but because my computer, like for some reason, won't work with Zoom, I'm using a Wacom tablet right now. It's like my backup. So this bridge, if we're looking up and the light is coming from here, that means that the underside of the bridge is dark. I don't like that you can't see that, so I'm gonna delete that door. And it's like a,
Well, I'll make you laugh a little bit, Catherine. Typical George Pratt comment by watching somebody do a demo. It goes, "Hey, I really like what you're doing, but does it always take this long?" He could really nail you with stuff like that. But I'm totally joking. You're flying through this. I could only say that because you're moving so expeditiously.
Yeah, if I hadn't planned to sell out, I would be still on my first sketch on the paper. So thank God for that. Let's see. So yeah, as I mentioned before, sometimes things don't really translate that well, like traditionally to digitally. This kind of looks funky, so I need to like fix it.
Explain that a little bit.
So like the shape of this, okay, I think it's because there is a lot, the balance between this gray value, this dark value is like pretty even right now. So I think I want more dark value. So I'm gonna like, yeah, it also doesn't help that like when I do my sketches traditionally, I just draw a box around it and I call it, yeah, that's the frame. Because, now that I have like an actual dimension I gotta work with, I'm like, oh God, that looks different. Okay. Yeah, that looks a little better. I think before it was like like the amount of darkness and the amount of like gray was like kind of even, and I don't want that. I want there to be like a like I want the blacks to have like take up most of the image, the grays to take up like second most, and then like just highlights throughout the image. So now I gotta like make it 3-dimensional. So there's that ball. I think I'm gonna crop it even more. And then I think I'm gonna put this in the middle. This side looks a little empty. So like a highlight there. So now that I have like the general shape down, now I have to focus on like making it look real. I think the reason why this sketch looks okay the way it was is because you know, it's just like a general sketchy like shape, and there wasn't like a lot of, it was just a shape and it looks cool. But now that it's like in Photoshop, it is also a shape, but now that like it's readable, you gotta start to worry about like form and detail and making it look realistic and not just like a really sketchy image. So this side is really empty. I need to do something about it. Also, would that be casting a shadow? Whatever. Um, so many dots. Something I like to do with windows is just kind of like only draw the shadow of the edges. It like suggests that there is a window, but at the same time, it's not like a black, dark shape that kind of detracts from the image. Gonna crop it in a little. Guess I'll like have a flag or something, just to add like a organic element to it. Forget it. And then I'm gonna have the two figures. So King Lear is gonna be this guy down here. Maybe I can have him here, and then just have the light make him stand out. Maybe I'll have him in the center. Maybe I can put a shadow down. Yeah. Yeah, the shape of that was standing out too much. I gotta fix it. I don't know if that's any better. Okay, and then I will, after this, because everything is so muted and like there's not a lot of contrast, I'll just like adjust the levels so that stands out more. Yes. Not working. I still don't like this shit. I think I'm just gonna pretend like there's a shadow here and just break it up. Yeah, it looks a little better.
I like that term, a pretend shadow.
Yeah, because that light shape was standing out too much.
Well, there's good reason for it then.
Yeah. So I'm gonna lighten the shadow here. I'm gonna throw a multiply layer over it just to darken. And then um, I think the skinnier things are, like real thin, the creepier it is. So I'm gonna,
On this assignment, Catherine, do you have to consider type anywhere?
I do, yeah, but I always forget. So thank you for reminding me. Yeah, so type. Um, Damn, I should have thought about that.
I'm sorry, I didn't, I was just asking. I wasn't suggesting or anything.
Yeah, usually I actually hire someone to do my type for me. I credit them, of course, and I pay them. But yeah, when I'm at a loss, I'm just like, I can't do this. I'm gonna hire someone who actually knows what they're doing with type.
That's how I feel too.
Hmm.
I was only paid to do type twice in my illustration career.
Oh
And,
God.
and there's good reason for it. It's interesting. If you don't, I never focused on it. If you can't, or you didn't study type, or it's not something you're proficient at, just let the professionals do it. I mean, that's not something I studied.
Yeah, no, I agree, because I know like graphic design and illustration aren't that far apart because we follow like the same rules basically. But for some reason, I just can't wrap my head around it, especially with type. Like I'll think something will look good because, oh, follow the movement, the shape here could use like something, and I'll do it, and it looks like shit, and I'm like, oh, I don't know what I'm doing.
Well, there's illustrators that incorporate type really well, but they really worked at it. They studied it, and
Yeah.
the effort that I know Sterling put in to learn how to use type took him a long time, and it makes it a big part of his design. My usage of a type is leaving room for somebody to put type in, for somebody
Oh,
else to do it.
yeah. I think like when I was a student in college, I did a lot of master copies of Bernie Fuchs. And something I loved about his work was that there was always like a lot of negative space, or just like a huge space that was just empty.
Yeah.
And then I realized that like he did that intentionally so that he could put type in it.
Well, he also did it too for variety. He was a
Yeah.
master at composition. I mean, I tell you what, I think he did as well or better than anybody. His use of materials. He got so much mileage out of a pencil and some glazes. I mean, it was just incredible what he could do. And then when he went to the oil wash or the oil lift out, the deft hand, the sensitivity in doing that, it's just nobody could mimic him. You could tell and there was a lot of people that tried, but he did it better than anybody.
Yeah. He is definitely one of my favorite illustrators from that era.
Yeah. He and my dad were very close friends, and he followed Bernie from Detroit to New York. Bernie went before him, and my dad would always comment and say Bernie was the most talented individual he'd ever seen. He said he just did things so easily.
Yeah, and it shows because his work is phenomenal. Like even now, like 50 years later, it's so good.
It's amazing. There was something in the water at that period. You think of my dad and Bernie and Heindel.
Yeah, like Bob Peak.
Alan Kober, Fred Atner. Those guys were all just amazing.
Yeah. So.
And then all the others that followed, Brad Holland, especially Brad and Gary.
Oh, Brad Holland's amazing.
He's got to be a big influence on you. I mean, look,
yeah,
just the design sense that he had. Was he there? Did he come to the academy when you were there?
No, I really would have loved to see him work.
Year afterwards, he came, and I was blown away when I saw him draw. I was expecting something so different, and it's like when we did we had figure drawing. He drew for the first 20-minute pose, and then he never stopped drawing on that pose for the whole 3 hours. And he did, and he just worked out this figure, and it became something totally different. But I thought it was like I was going to see something very immediate and happen really fast. But he really did consider everything about it.
Huh. That's interesting.
Yeah, it was something totally different than I thought.
Yeah.
Great drawer.
Yeah, I remember when I saw Bernie Fuchs' work, at, I think, your house or Mark English's house. I
It
think
was-
I cried.
and my dad had several of his pieces.
Yeah, I definitely I like just stood there. I looked at his piece and I just felt tears coming down my eyes. I was like, what is happening?
Was one of them that party scene? But it was like
Yeah,
all the people standing. It was big. It was like 3 feet across. For I mean,
yeah,
it was huge, and I loved it. He focused on this party scene, but his focus, all this detail, was like he chose to render the crown molding on the top of the ceiling because it was kind of an upshot. It's absolutely beautiful, beautiful interpretation of that party.
oh my God. Yeah, it blew me away.
Yeah, he was kind of good.
He was all right. Okay, so this is another thing that I do when I need to like, I guess like check the composition. I will kind of throw down like a gray color or any mid-tone color, and I'll set the layer to hard mix. And if I can still read what's going on in this like now that's only 2 values, I'm like, okay, I think I have everything down and I can move on. The reason why I do this is because I feel like if your image or if your composition works with only 2 values, like I think you're good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The fewer the better. Two's the
Yeah,
best.
exactly.
If you
So
got
like
one, nothing's happening. But if you can do it with two, the better off you are.
yeah, yeah. Like if it's readable, if you understand what's going on, if the focal point is still there, like I think you're set.
Well,
With
most
sorry.
most of my favorite artwork is in 3 or 4 values. I mean, I can't, I battle with that with myself all the time, trying to, control myself. But the things I like looking at have very few values in it.
Yeah, it's just the simplicity.
Yep. It allows you, my dad would point out all the time. He said, I really make these really simple compositions, but the pictures look very complex because I keep the values so close together. I can play with all these materials and make them in the use of mark making and materials so complex.
Mhm.
He said, but if you keep your imagery real simple and your value structure real simple, you can get away with all kinds of playfulness with media.
Such wise words.
I'm just repeating it.
All right, I'm starting my second thumbnail now. So
Okay, everybody noticed, and I assume you're looking at your sketchbook,
yeah, I am.
right? I just think that's so great. That's you created your reference. You created a resource to design your picture.
Yeah, I think it's good to have it. I think it's good to always like look back on what you've done because starting from scratch is really hard.
Yeah. Well, so, I see that happen a lot in thumbnailing. People will just eliminate the good parts of what they had by redrawing everything. And they just
Oh,
it's like a vicious cycle. They just keep repeating, they never get anywhere because they don't lock onto something and correct what's not working, just eliminate the things that aren't working.
so now that I'm drawing this out, I'm like suddenly thinking of Mark English's like his more recent work with like the wonky looking houses and the farms. Yeah,
It
I
looks
might. Yeah, I might look at references of that later for like this house to see how you did the windows and everything. There's like a shadow.
He was really funny about that. He would drive around town and shoot these pictures of these dilapidated houses, or really kind of fun old Victorian or homes that have had real interesting shape to them.
Mhm.
And photograph and print them out, and then cut them up in pieces and collage them. And so he would try to stay, it was like pretty close to reality, but he would move them around that would just make them so wonky. And you just, almost impossible to draw him that way, but he could accomplish it really, really easily with the collage.
That's so cool. Oh my God, this is so laggy. And then just like the light shape over here. I think I have like the ocean. Something. I'll take this.
I have to tell you, Catherine, this is very entertaining.
I'm glad.
I'm really enjoying it. It's like, have you ever seen any of the the films, the film Picasso drawing? And
I have not.
you should look it up. Just look up video of Picasso drawing.
Okay.
There's several of them, and it's like they're shooting him through a screen. You're watching him draw, and it's transparent what he's drawing, and it's just so immediately. It's like you're watching him think, and that's what I feel like when I'm watching you do this.
That's so cool. Yeah, I'm glad to hear that. One thing I hate the most, I guess, not hate, but I dislike, is like watching those like videos on Facebook, those viral videos where it like starts off with like an eye, and then they like render the shit out of it, and they just keep rendering like the lashes, and then like they just like slowly like expand outwards and then draw like the whole face or something. And I'm just like, I don't know, like you can tell that there was absolutely no thought that went into it.
Yeah.
And yeah, and I just don't like that. I like watching people, like their thought process, the way they choose to like where they choose to put something, why they chose it. I like that stuff.
Well, it's like, telling a good story. The first thing
Hmm.
is have a point.
Yeah.
I feel like some of those, just like rendering a photograph, it's like, what's the point?
Yeah, exactly. So King Lear is going to be just a line for now. There is like, I think in my sketch the house was bigger. That was much
But
better.
remind the audience to keep asking questions. We have quite a few people in here, and I know they're watching it as intensely as I am. But we got about a little over 15 minutes. So just if you got some more questions for Catherine, please ask.
One of my biggest inspirations is, I think Giacometti. I think that's his name. I can't really pronounce it. But he just has like sculptures and paintings of just really skinny people, and it's so weird, really creepy.
Oh,
And
Giacometti.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
I love his stuff. I
Yeah,
think
I
it's
do
so
too.
cool.
I do too. Beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
Miriam says, no question, 100% awesome.
Oh, thank you, Miriam. All right, so I'm kind of liking the shape of this. I think I'm gonna extend this light shape out more. This was a weird tangent, the cliff. Yeah. Just random windows. Or what are these called? Okay, that's kind of cool. Let me fix this side.
The sculptor you were referring to, Giacometti, is like the most copied sculptor ever. That's like everybody tries to do. A lot of contemporaries chasing him.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I think like you would think that it's his stuff is very easy. You just make it like a stick person, but like
No.
yeah, they never really captured the essence of it. There's something like very striking about his stuff. That's another artist who also draws like thin, ghouly looking people. I forgot his name. Modigliani, I think.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Now
I actually learned about him.
Yeah, and
Sorry?
you know he only lived to be like 27 years old.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Really, but he was amazing.
Yeah, he's so good.
I could be off. I get, you know, you talk about people that die, really talented individuals that die in, um, you know, of course, the musicians, Hendrix and Joplin, and you think about that. So I always get messed up on their exact age, but I know he died at a really, really young age.
That's such a shame.
And just imagine what he would have done with a long, long career.
Yeah. I actually was super interested in his work because of the movie It, that clown movie. Yeah. Because I know that one scene they use his painting or like an inspiration of his painting to like as like one of the kids' fears.
Really, I
And
never saw the movie, so I wouldn't know.
oh yeah, it was like really interesting because one of the kids' fears was that this painting was really creepy to look at. And like I think the clown manifested itself as like the painting come to life. And like, you know, Modigliani, his like figures are so like jacked up and like crooked that like when they animated the monster coming out of the frame and it was like just as like crooked and like wonky, it was so creepy. And I was like, oh, I love that. So I'm trying to figure out the clouds right now.
So you remember the Batman movie with Jack Nicholson in it, when he's, you know, going through and destroying the images and the pieces in the museum, and he stops at a Francis Bacon, you know, the scream of Francis Bacon, the Pope.
Oh yeah, it was like purple and it's like.
And he's like, "Don't touch that. I like that one." It's one of the most frightening images ever.
Yeah, Bacon is also one of my favorite artists because his work, there's so much like it's so violent and like even though in this I can't describe it. It's just like you can tell that he was like a really like troubled person, and it shows in his work so clearly.
Great painter. Miriam also said, outstanding articulation of your thinking and image making process.
Oh, thank you.
You're
You're so sweet.
Just look at what you accomplished, and it will be about an hour and a half in front of and talking and dealing with a bunch of other things.
Uh,
And you're kind of double dipping here because I know you're going to turn these in.
yeah, so I'm really two birds with one stone. Okay, these clouds, I will just worry about them later.
I
I
I hope they choose one of these because how great would it be able to say, "Hey, we watched you do that."
I had an audience. Okay. This ground is too light now. So this would actually work well with type. I could see type going like here or something. Let's see. I want like texture on the rocks because there's like a really cool vertical pattern going on. What is that? Okay.
I tell you to be careful. You're almost approaching 4 values.
Oh God.
I'm teasing. I love it.
I gotta do a wave or like ocean sea. I don't really know how I'm gonna do that. I think I'm gonna.
When you do things, I mean, I like that it's become so close to an edge. Do you worry about how they get cropped in the final execution?
Sorry, can you say that again?
When you do say things like such a small, sliver of a shape at the bottom is looking great the way you have it cropped, but
Hmm.
you could ever worry about how an art director or somebody will interpret it and crop it and make it where it doesn't read that way?
Yeah, sometimes like it does get cropped out, and that is something that I learned that will happen as I started working. That like they will just like not care about certain things and just get rid of it, and it's kind of shitty. But yeah, that's something that I still put it in because like at the end of the day, I hold the rights to the image, and I will post it the way I want it to look.
Well, I really love uh, the shapes you brought in at the bottom. Um,
Thank you. Yeah, I think like if I had just left this one like horizontal gray shade, I think
yeah,
it was a little distracting. I think we needed to break it up a little.
such a variety of scale now because of it. Really nice.
Thank you. So I'm gonna make King Lear a little smaller because I want him to like. I want this image to feel very like, I guess, like as if he's vulnerable. He's like in his lowest rock bottom state. So the smaller he is, the better. He's just like a rectangle right now, but that's okay. Yeah, and then so this is a good place to stop. So after this, I will usually like take both of these. Oops. I'll usually like take both of these and compile it into like a blank document and then send it off to the art director for him to choose which one he wants to do. But yeah, I think
How many do you generally send?
I usually send 3 to 4, but I think there's only 5 minutes left, so I'm gonna stop here. So I would want him to choose this one. This one's cool. I kind of like it.
Me too.
Yeah.
I like them both, but this is really powerful.
Yeah, this is very like there's something about it. This is different too. I kind of like how like wonky it is. This one is like it's all right. So yeah. So usually from here, so let's say that we do choose this one. From here, so right now my canvas image size is 4 by 6 inches, and the poster needs to be, I think, 24 by 36. So I would, yeah, huge. After like pixels go after like 10K, I get nervous. Oh no, I shouldn't have done that. Oh, fuck. But yeah, after that, I'll like expand the canvas, and after I expand the canvas, I'll start like sort of tightening up the image and rendering it out and really focusing on like the details and like fine tuning the shapes and everything. Because right now this is still just a sketch. Like it looks cool, but it would be nice if it like tightened up a little. Okay, I regret doing this.
It's okay. That's pretty. We'll talk for a minute. That's pretty uncommon for you to, most of the time you're thinking about like magazine size, right?
Mhm.
To have something that's, 36 inches tall, 3 feet tall. That's a big poster, and yeah, I'm sure it will be very impactful. But that's a big file.
Yeah, my computer has run out of space like every month because of how big my files get. Like now that I'm working more on movie posters, it's like every project that I do, it like completely ruins my computer. Yeah.
Well, that's I've learned to deal with that. Everything, I don't have anything on my computer anymore. Everything's on is on a alternative drive.
Yeah, that's smart. I should probably invest in one of those. Yeah, so from here, so this is really fucking big now. From here, I will start to like really go in, like clean up edges, work on like refining the shapes and everything, and like sort of so like how I King Lear as a fucking rectangle, actually like draw him out and make him look like a human. And so for like things like this door, I maybe I want like I don't know, maybe I want like not just like look to the like,
I'm going to make a really quick comment, and I didn't. It kind of came to me when you were messing around with the figure and
mhm.
making it a little bit more look more like a figure. But I just want to remind everybody in the room, think of where Catherine placed focus. Her her focus in starting this thing wasn't about like drawing the figure, wasn't making the figure. Her focus was the complete design of the image, the light and dark pattern, division of space, the big shapes. And I, I think that has a lot to do with somebody that work the way that you work with so much focus on design. And you got to think about the whole picture at one time. And it just completely sold it. Beautiful piece.
Thank you. Yeah, yeah, you gotta worry about the big picture first before you get to the small details. I think that is one thing I do kind of like struggle with. It's like once you like the small details is something that I had to learn to like also pay attention to.
I think you're doing okay.
Yeah, and so like from here, I'll start like rendering things out. Like this cliff especially needs like a lot of attention.
Okay, so when's this due?
So there is no due date for this, but I will. So like in the next week, I'll probably like tighten this up to the point where like I'm comfortable to put color down. I usually work like solely in black and white until like almost the very end. Like this will be almost complete by the end because I feel like as long as you have a value structure in black and white, like you just have to like worry about color scheme and like saturation and temperature and stuff, but you don't have to worry about value. Like if you have your value structure down, like the image is basically done. And like color is important, but like it'll just be like a nice additional element to it.
Color's subservient to what you've already done. And
Yeah.
it's phenomenal for establishing mood and emotion and making a piece better. Words of wisdom, you might have heard my dad say this. He used to say all the time, because I've never worked on a piece that the color saved it, but I've worked on lots of pieces where the color ruined it.
Yeah, me too. So interesting. Yeah. So yeah, I think I'm gonna, oh my God, it's 9. Yeah, I think I'm gonna stop here. But yeah,
Fantastic. What a great stopping place. And then it looks like you timed it perfectly. Put those two together, that got to where you wanted to. I appreciate you being right on time. And then I'm going to say this, and it's like, so give us a little foreshadowing for next week.
so next week I will try to have this image like tightened up so that like, you know, it looks like a more finished illustration. And then next week I'm going to show you guys how to do color, and I'm going to also show you guys how I handle texture, because that is something that I feel like is really important, especially with digital illustration. Yeah. So I'm going to save this file.
All right, Catherine, this has been absolutely amazing. Everybody, I hope you enjoyed Catherine's beautiful presentation tonight, and we have an idea of what Catherine's going to do for us next week. And I'm really looking forward to it. So,
I am too.
all right. Thank you, Catherine. It was a great evening. Everybody, thank you for joining us. And I look forward to seeing you all next week.
Thank you guys for coming, and thank you so much, John, for like hosting this.
This is totally awesome. And
Thank you.
it was like watching a thriller. I really enjoyed it. I was riveted.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, I'll see you guys next week. Have a great rest of your week, guys.